Welcome to everybody again. Good to see you all. This morning I'm talking about failure. Ugh, failure. But how to handle it. So there's something positive coming out of it all. Speaking of failure, a mafia godfather finds out that his bookkeeper has cheated him out of $10 million. Well, his bookkeeper is deaf, and that was the reason he got the job in the first place. It was assumed that a deaf bookkeeper would not hear anything that he might have to testify to in court. So when the godfather goes to confront the bookkeeper about the missing $10 million, he brings along his attorney who knows sign language. So the godfather says to the lawyer, "Ask him where the $10 million is that he embezzled." And the attorney, using sign language, says, "Ask him where the money is." And the bookkeeper signs back, "I don't know what you're talking about." I can't do sign language, so I'll just pretend. So the godfather pulls out a pistol and puts it to the bookkeeper's head and it says to the lawyer, "Tell him again. Ask him again where that $10 million is." And the bookkeeper signs to him. He says, "He's going to kill you if you don't tell him where the $10 million is." And the bookkeeper signs back, "Okay, you win. The money is in a brown briefcase buried behind the shed in my cousin Vinny's backyard in Queens." And the godfather asks the attorney, "Well, what did he say?" And the attorney says, "He says you don't have the guts to pull the trigger." Well, we'll see where he succeeds or fails or not, right? They say crime doesn't pay. Well, anybody here ever failed at anything? Come on, everybody, raise your hands. Anybody ever failed at anything? Anything at all? Okay, I know we are in a metaphysical service, but really, we've all failed, haven't we? We've all failed at almost everything. I failed at almost everything I've undertaken. I have failed tremendously more times than I've succeeded. And yet, when people look up my biography on the web, they see all of these things. They say, "Oh, you're such an accomplished person. Oh, you're so successful," and I blush. And then I go, ugh, because, there's stuff in my consciousness that says, yeah, right. But I have done a lot of things. I studied art in college. I was an art major. I painted. I did watercolors and sketches. And I actually sold everything, and I never painted or drew again. Ever. Does that make me a failure? Well, in a way it does, doesn't it? I went into acting, and I failed to get 98% of the auditions I went on. Does that make me a failure? Kind of. Because, every time I lost an audition, I thought about those failures. Then I became a writer, and I did not get 99% of the things I interviewed for. Losses after losses. What does my consciousness look like according to failure? I mean, I'm a loser. There's no doubt about it. I have lost almost everything that I went up for. Now, I became a minister, and I started the center almost 4 years ago, and statistics report that 8 out of 10 centers and churches fail in the first year. But we fail to keep most of the people who've walked in here, so does that make us a failure? Well, see, that's all interpretation, isn't it? It really is. I think everyone here today, though, is concerned about failure in their lives because we're all facing it day after day after day, and nobody's really talking about it, and nobody ever tells you what to do about it, do they? Nobody ever. And especially, we need to look at this metaphysically. I think most of us just cringe with horror and shame when we think about our losses and our failures. I tend to. We don't like to talk about them, and because we don't like to talk about them, we rarely look at why we fail at these things, or at things especially that are important to us. And we blame our failures on all kinds of things. Even when we've been taught to do otherwise, which is, we haven't been taught very much really about dealing with failure. But let's say you're suffering from financial setbacks, bankruptcy, debts, your stocks have lost value, whatever. Maybe, what do you blame it on? Mostly the recession, right? Oh, times are bad, times are no good. Maybe you made investments when the planets were in the wrong configuration. Have you ever thought of that? Or maybe you invested when your horoscope sign was in Saturn. Isn't that supposed to be the planet of disaster or something? Maybe a project you began with was going great and then it just took a nosedive and crashed and burned. Did you tell yourself that it wasn't meant to be? That's what we say. Oh, maybe God has another plan for me. I just probably shouldn't do this. I've heard people say that a lot, haven't you? What about your relationship? Maybe your relationship that you're going through now is in deep trouble and it is ending just like the one before. You think maybe you're trying to pay off karmic debt or something? Or do you wonder if you're doomed to loneliness, from this karmic thing that is going on life after life, and you keep doing the same thing over and over again because of some tiny mistake you made in one past life? Did somebody close to you recently pass away, die? We think of death as the ultimate failure, don't we? We don't like to talk about death. It makes us nervous because we think of ourselves, of course. Failure and death are the same thing. But we can talk about the causes of death, I think, easier than we can talk about the causes of our so-called failures. And, our personal failures, our business failures, our financial failures. Well, as I said, obviously I'm talking about failure today, but how to think about it and how to heal our consciousness of failure. Consciousness, so many people say, well, I hear that word all the time, but what does that really mean? And we say, well, it's everything you've ever thought, everything you've ever experienced, everything that you've ever concluded makes up your consciousness. Well, in the case of failures, we have taken into consciousness the memory of these failures, haven't we? And those failures have great emotion attached to them. So now, every time we start to do something that's based on maybe a former failure, all of those memories charged with feeling come to mind, and we get depressed just thinking about, oh, I did that before, oh, God. You see, if I had to go audition today, I'd probably go, oh, they'll just reject me. I know they'll reject me. I'll never get that part because I've got all these charged things in my consciousness of my past failures. It's the same with anything, with a relationship, with your business, with whatever. We have these charged memories that make a pattern in our consciousness. So, what I blame all my failures on? Those patterns in consciousness, those charged memories in consciousness. Do I blame myself for having those memories in consciousness? Well, I guess I do because I put them there. I honestly do blame myself, but I also blame my ignorance most of all. Most of us assimilate these memories with these feelings. We do it in ignorance because we don't understand, we don't know how to deal with failure. We just brush it aside. So I blame myself because now that I know metaphysics, I have failed to neutralize those feelings and those memories in consciousness through spiritual mind treatment. I only do it when they come up again as much as I can. But obviously they're still there because every time I think about a particular area in my life, I have to really work hard to keep from getting depressed or upset about something. Now, when I was acting, I was a metaphysician very young, so even as I started my acting career, I was a metaphysician, but I didn't have the least understanding of the part I was playing in my success or my failure. I thought it was just those people out there were going to give me something and I was going to be lucky or whatever, even though I knew a little bit about how spirit works creatively through my life. So I blamed everybody but myself. Well, I did blame myself, but I blamed mostly the outside conditions on all of my failures to get the roles I wanted. But because, or in spite of all of those failures, I still consider myself to be a bit of a success in life. Do you? Yeah. Benjamin Disraeli said, and he was Prime Minister during Queen Victoria's reign, and he became Prime Minister in 1868. He said, All my successes have been built on my failures. So we all think that way. That's a good way to think, isn't it? Abraham Lincoln failed at almost everything he undertook until he became president in 1861. He lost election after election after election. You see, we don't remember these famous people for their failures. As a matter of fact, we probably don't even know most of the failures they went through. We remember them for what they finally achieved. Obviously, the fact that these two men failed repeatedly didn't prevent them from learning something new and try again and again and again. So that's really what this is about, isn't it? Let you build on your failures. Build success on the very ashes of your crashing and burning.